In today's world of 2014, Mexico is the ninth largest producer of oil, contributing a production rate of about 3 million barrels per day, making them a huge part of the world's oil industry. Oil in Mexico has long been an essential part of its history, dating back to the Aztecs and Mayans. It all began in 1868 when the Gulf of Mexico Exploration Company first began its hunt for drilling oil in Veracruz. During this time, most of the oil was in the hands of foreign companies consisting of U.S. and Great Britain. During this time, when Mexico's oil was greatly owned by foreign companies, this caused great conflict within the country and its economic state. Mexico was not reaping the benefits of its own oil because the money wasn't staying within local hands but going to foreign countries. But despite this conflict, in the 1920s, Mexico became the world's second largest producer of oil. In an act to gain control of their own oil, President Lázaro Cárdenas decided to nationalize the petroleum industry, which finally returned the power back into the hands of Mexico. Also, on March 18, 1938, he later created Pemex, a state-owned company that held a monopoly over the oil industry, ensuring that the oil remained in Mexico's control. This would soon cause conflict between Mexico and the foreign nations due to the fact that they were angered about losing their control over their oil. In response to the nationalization of Mexico's oil, the United States tried to embargo all imports from Mexico, but this was short-lived due to their need for oil because of World War II. In 1934, Mexico and foreign oil companies reached a final agreement where all the companies received a monetary settlement as for their compensation. In the 1970s, Mexico's oil industry was booming due to new oil discoveries, and this led to the rise and final success of the Mexican oil industry.
Mexico owns the right to many hydrocarbon resources due to its geographic location along the Gulf of Mexico. The Bay of Campeche, which is the southern bight in the Gulf, is surrounded by three states, Campeche, Tabasco, and Veracruz. It is significant to Mexico because more than 3/4 of Mexico's crude oil is produced in this bay. Comalub-Zaap is made up of three fields, Cu, Malub, and Zap. It is the most productive oil field in Mexico at about 800,000 barrels per day of crude oil, as you can see in the chart. This productive offshore oil field was discovered in 2002. Another example is the Cantarell field, and it is another offshore oil field discovered in the Bay of Campeche. It was once the largest oil field in the world, however, the numbers have drastically fallen up to present day. According to the EIA, as of 2011, it is producing about 500,000 barrels per day of crude oil, which is significantly 75% lower than its peak of production in 2004. The U.S. Energy Information Agency suggests that 25% of crude oil produced in Mexico comes from onshore oil fields. Similar findings are reported that more than 80% of onshore production occurs near the southern states of Veracruz and Tabasco. The southern part where the onshore drilling occurs is attractive to the oil industry due to its certified light and super light oil, and it is responsible for about 70,000 barrels of oil production. Mexico's largest hydrocarbon reserve is in the Chicontepec Basin, on the other hand, and it is in the eastern part of the country near Mexico City. The Chicontepec Basin consists of numerous small fields spread over hundreds of square miles. A study from the EIA suggests that Chicontepec Basin has produced more than 19 billion barrels of an extra heavy crude oil equivalent. Due to the characteristic of low permeability in this region, these fields are highly fractured and are at low pressures.
Mexico's demand for natural gas is constantly expanding as their natural gas production is slowly decreasing. Mexico is a major importer of natural gas from other countries, especially the United States. There is currently an abundance of cheap-priced natural gas, and Mexico is taking into this opportunity through new pipelines. The United States supplies more natural gas than Pemex produces in Mexico. Mexico is currently in a natural gas crisis. Tim Johnson from McClatchy, D.C. states, In short, Mexico is over the barrel on natural gas, made worse by a state-owned oil company that's desperate to hunt for elephants, massive oil discoveries, rather than develop more humdrum, far less profitable natural gas fields. Obviously, Pemex is at the center of Mexico's natural gas crisis. To solve the problem, Mexico and Pemex will have to come to a rapid solution to this growing problem. Daily volumes of natural gas via pipeline into Mexico are set to double, and they must look at becoming self-sufficient and advancing their technology. Mexico is facing a real problem and is struggling exploring and producing their natural gas they depend on. Mexico has been lackluster in natural gas production, even though they have enormous natural gas reserves. Pemex has limited natural gas pipeline capacity and is falling behind in the production Mexico needs. Pemex cannot handle the growing demand for natural gas across Mexico. Mexico is far back in shale gas production happening in the United States and depends on pipelines to supply them with natural gas. Ernesto Marcus, a partner in a Mexico City consulting firm, says asking Pemex to develop shale gas reserves is like asking an elephant to eat with chopsticks. Clearly, Mexico is behind in shale gas technology and hopes to solve this problem by building more pipelines into the United States, specifically Texas, where shale gas reserves are being drilled. Mexico is currently importing a third of its needs in natural gas, and this also hurts the development of other industries in Mexico. This crisis forces Mexico to buy high-priced liquefied natural gas from other nations and affects their economy. Mexico is lagging behind in natural gas production but consuming more every day. This is why imports of natural gas in Mexico have skyrocketed. Mexico's rising demand and consumption of natural gas will only grow. One big problem is that Pemex is using about 40% of Mexico's natural gas for upstream exploration and production, but Pemex is not succeeding. Significant amounts are also used in refineries and petrochemical plants. Pemex is not filling Mexico's rising demand for natural gas. Another main use for natural gas in Mexico is in the power sector. Much of the demand has been due to the recent fuel switching. The OGIB research team states, in 2000, only 20% of Mexican power generation was fueled by natural gas, but by 2007, nat gas use increased to account for 50% of power output, largely displacing oil-fired generation. The most crucial aspect to this problem is that Mexico plans to greatly expand gas-fired power generation. Mexico's gas demand is set to rise 3.3% annually through 2018.
Mexico's oil sector generates about 16% of the country's export earnings, but keeps decreasing over time. Mexico's biggest customer of trade is the U.S., receiving about 71% of Mexico's exports. Since Mexico is a net importer of natural gas, higher levels of natural gas consumption will depend on more imports from either the United States, who is Mexico's most important trading partner, or imports of liquefied natural gas from other countries. United States crude oil imports from Mexico have declined since 2006, showing their steady drop in crude oil production and their huge demand for fuel. Mexico is among the top 3 exporters of oil to the United States. In 2013, the United States imported about 850,000 barrels per day of crude oil from Mexico, but their export is slowly decreasing. The demand for importing of natural gas is quickly growing because of greater use for power generation. Mexico also used to be self-sufficient in natural gas, but now it imports a third of its needs. Mexico's main energy consumption is 56% petroleum, with a following 29% consumption in natural gas. Pemex is Mexico's largest consumer of natural gas, using about 40% of its total. Gas consumption across the country has risen 160% since 1990.